Peace and blessings. There is a lot of confusion around the new year, with most of it being rooted in Abib, meaning green. So I want to start by looking at two Hebrew words that are actually translated as green before moving on to Abib. The first word is Raanan. You can see that this word is translated green multiple times. So let's move on to the second word, Yereq, which is translated once as grass and every other time as green. And there are several other words from the same root which are also translated mostly as green. So let's look at this word in the Exodus account to see what it says. Verse 14, and the locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and rested in all the coast of Egypt. Very grievous were they. Before them there were no such locusts as they, neither after them shall be such. For they covered the face of the whole earth, so that the land was darkened. And they did eat every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left. And there remained not any green thing in the trees or in the herbs of the field through all the land of Egypt. So the locusts ate everything that was green, and they also ate fruit from the trees. So let's look at the plague of hail in chapter 9, which is where we encounter the word Abib. Verse 31, and the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was boiled. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up. And in the interlinear it says, now the flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was in the head, and the flax was in bud. So what this actually seems to be talking about is whether or not the flax and barley were already bearing fruit. But we don't have enough information here to make a decision. So let's look at the word Abib. It is translated as fresh heads and fresh heads of grain. Now under word origin, it says from an unused word. But if we go over to the word eb, it says from the same as Abib and is translated as green or blossoms. So let's look at the two uses of this word. Job 8 verse 11. Can the rush grow up without mire? Can the flag grow without water? Whilst it is yet in his greenness and not cut down, it withereth before any other herb. So are the paths of all that forget God, and the hypocrite's hope shall perish. So there's not a lot of information here, but this reference to being cut down seems to be pointing to harvest. So let's look at the second account. Song of Solomon 6:11. I went down into the garden of nuts to see the fruits of the valley, and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded. The interlinear says, I went down to the garden of nuts to see the green of the valley, to see whether the vine had budded and the pomegranates had bloomed. So now let's look at this word budded. It says to bud, sprout, or shoot. So I want to look at two of the uses of this word. The first one is Genesis chapter 40:10. It says, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, shot forth its blossoms, and brought forth its clusters of ripe grapes. So when this vine budded, it brought forth its fruit. And the context of this is when Joseph interpreted the dream of Pharaoh's cupbearer. The next one I want to look at is number 17. Verse 8 says, and it came to pass that on the next day, Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds and had produced blossoms and yielded ripe almonds. So again, this word is associated with the fruit actually being present. And in both cases, they were ripe. The grapes were ripe and the almonds are ripe. So the common denominator is not color, but the presence of fruit. So now let's go to the laws that actually pertain to the first fruit offering. Leviticus 23 verse 10. Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when ye be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah to be accepted for you. So this says that the first fruit is brought after the harvest is complete. Verse 14, and ye shall eat neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your God. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Now in the interlinear, instead of green ears, it says fresh grain. No reference in the definition of this word to green. Furthermore, why would God be saying this if the first fruit offering was given before harvest. This wouldn't even be a concern because the fruit inside the barley, while it is green, is not ready to eat. So let's go to Exodus 23, verse 14. 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee in the time appointed of the month Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. So if your field is not ready, then you don't have an offering, and you can't come to God without the offering, which means that the first fruit offering needs to occur after the harvest. Let's keep going. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field. So now he's confirming that it is after harvest, because the feast of harvest is after the wheat harvest. And he says here it's the first fruit of your labors that you have sown in the field. So that means that the preference should also be planted field and not wild grown. And the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in the labors out of the field. And the final confirmation is Exodus 34:22. And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. So now we see that not only does the fruit need to be in the ear, but it also needs to be ready for harvest by the day of the first fruits offering. But there was a shorter way around this, because I believe that at the heart of this issue is the resurrection. So what is the first fruit offering a picture of? It is a picture of Yeshua being the wave offering as the first fruits to God. So the real question is, when he was offered, was he still green and immature, or was he a finished work? The answer to this is obvious, as he is the model for the resurrection, and he was faithful till death. But therein lies the issue. The confusion comes because many think they will climb up another way, namely being raptured before death as an unfinished work. And this belief has spilled over here. But God is not going to accept an immature and imperfect product. So as we see, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. Thus you should beware of such leaven.